Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee for Monday, March 4th, 2013. I'm Paul Krikorian, Chair of the committee, and I'm joined by the Honorable Bill Rosendahl. We'll be taking public comment prior to the agenda items, but as of right now, we have no public comment cards. If somebody comes in, we'll consider that a little bit later in the agenda then. Mr. Rosendahl, I'd propose that we consider items 4 and 5 as consent items, but then again, we don't have a quorum today, so if
one's for 52,000, and one's 87,000.
These are both tax refund claims. So
fine, it's me. Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and move items 4 and 5 forward. Absolutely. On recommendation of chair and member. And then we'll go ahead and begin closed session. Next. So if there are any speakers who'd like to be heard on the closed session items, please fill out a card and bring it forward, and raise your hand while you're filling it out. I see none, so public comment on the closed session items 1 and 2 is now closed. So let's begin with item number 1. All right, we are back in open session now, and we're joined by the Honorable Council Member Tom LaBonge. So why don't we go directly then to item number 3.
Item 3 is a motion LaBonge Weston relative to various actions to provide funding and restore operations at the Griffith Observatory from 5 days to 6 days a week to the end of the fiscal year.
Mr. LaBonge, welcome. Would you like to present on this matter, or would you like to be heard after staff presents?
We'll present it together, just so I get started out.
Whatever's your pleasure, sir. The mic is yours.
Vicky Israel, Assistant General Manager, Recreation and Parks. The vulnerable Dr. Ed Krupp, the longest-serving member of the Recreation and Parks staffs at 43 years and counting. And how many moon years is that? The same?
That's close. There's a little variation. I don't know.
That's good. Mark Pine, the number 1 man in the number 2 position, if that's the correct way to state it there. So several years ago, 1992, John Ferraro steps up to the monument there, God bless his soul, and says we got to do something about the observatory. The enthusiasm that was created a lot by Dr. Krupp and his leadership here and the Friends of the Observatory, which Mark Pine was a part of that team, started the mission. And through Esther Feldman, if you remember the name, she was very involved with the first county Prop A and subsequent Prop A's. We started putting money together. With public and private dollars, there was $93 million spent on the renovation and expansion of the Griffith Observatory, which children from throughout Southern California come to enjoy. Because of budget challenges by Recreation and Parks, Mr. John Muckery had to make a very tough and difficult call to retract and open only 5 days a week. And knowing that we do, as council members, save money in our accounts, in that 1290 account, I believe it is, Mr. Serrano, and I said, listen, let's get the doors back open again so they could go 6 days a week. And then I wanted to do it for the full next 2 years so they didn't have to worry. But Avak Catalan, Avak, I hope you're listening, Avak, he said you can't do it in the next fiscal year, you only can do it through 1 year. So I said, fine. I'm personally committed to helping Recreation and Parks, and mostly the children of Los Angeles, because what has happened is they've had to reduce their school program because of eligible days that are there. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Vicki, who will turn it over to Ed, and then we'll open for questions. Thank you for considerations. I'm committed to 2015 plus.
Well, we're greatly appreciative of that, Councilman LaBonge. And Dr. Krupp can give you a few comments about the attendance. I think we reached almost close to 1 million visitors this past year. And so there's clearly a need to be open on Tuesday. So we look forward to reopening on Tuesday.
The only thing I would add is that obviously I'm there those weekdays, and you arrive on Tuesday, and in the morning the grounds are already covered with people, tourists, locals, and all. They have an expectation of sorts to be able to attend. For one reason or another, didn't get the word. But there's plenty of people that would be wanting to use the building on those Tuesdays that don't get to, of course.
And I just wanted to add, I wanted to thank Mr. Kokoyan for his work as a state representative. He was always helpful in support of the observatory. The one thing, too, when people go there, they get three things. They get the great observatory, and not only is he the great director of the observatory, but all the stars in the universe is so important for us, connected through one Dr. Krupp. And at the same time, they get a view of the city. It's our kind of central point where someone go to a vista. And also, they do have the Hollywood sign, and a number of tour buses or vans come up, and they shuttle them in and out, and it really is something that's special, and I want to continue to make it special. I think I don't want to say cheated the people, but we spent $93 million to open this facility, and if there's a way we could get it for 6 days, that's great. The seventh day is a day of rest, but it's Monday, which they do special cleaning of the observatory, because you ask, why don't you go 7 days? And also, they reserve the 1 day, it's called the James Dean amendment, so if they come back and make filming, which you're so supportive of, both you and Mr. Rosendahl, but I know you, Paul. That's it.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Labange, and all of you for this. I think this is so important, Mr. Labange, because this is kind of a very strong indicator of the kind of impacts that our budget challenges have had on the people of Los Angeles as we've gone through these difficult few years. And to have, the Griffith Observatory, one of the great landmarks of this city, one of the great institutions that we have in this country, to have to close down to school children because of our budget deficit is shameful. And it's an indication, I think, of the continuing challenge that people must understand is very real that this city faces. When we talk about cutbacks, when we talk about reductions, when we talk about budget deficits, this is what it means. It means kids not being able to go to the Griffith Observatory. It means tourists arriving there and being turned away and saying, no, you can't come today. It's shameful. This is one of the places that I grew up in, this building, and it was one of the places that I spent, some of the best times of my childhood in, and a few of my best dates when I went to Laserium as well.
Mine too.
I don't know if you still have Laserium, but but in any event, this is a great example of all that we're talking about. And Mr. Labange, for you to step up and to be able to find the funding to do this yourself as an individual is a tremendous tribute to you and your affection for this park and for this observatory and for the people that it serves. So I want to thank you very much. Mr. Rosendahl?
Yeah, just a couple of things. First of all, full disclosure, thank you for that phone call with the captain of the PCH. It was really...
PHP.
Yeah, it was very good, and I appreciated that.
PCH is Pacific Coast Highway, so I just wanted to get it.
PCH.
Yeah.
The only thing I got is this question here that says fiscal impact, unknown, in as much as the analysis has not been presented to determine if the 49K allocation of AB 1290 funds is sufficient to fully fund the cost of the 6th day of operations of the remainder of 2012-13. Why haven't they done that and say it works?
Well,
Yes, it does work. Yes,
It works?
we did do an analysis,
Perfect.
yes.
Great, that was...
For the end of this fiscal
I
year.
applaud Tom for this.
It's not me, Billy. They do the numbers.
Great,
All right, good.
it's all great then.
Good.
So you're good with that, Mr. Rosendahl? So the one proviso, though, and I think you mentioned it, Mr. Labange, is that what we'll do out of this committee is approve this for the one fiscal year, and then we understand that you're committed to it, but we'll revisit that in the context of the next budget year.
Correct.
If that's...
But there
if
could
that
be an
meets
asterisk
your-
by this because I'm committed to this, Ray.
Sure.
On the record.
I'll make note of it.
On the record and duly noted.
And
All right, well,
witnesses.
thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Did we have
Thank you very much.
Any cards? Okay. Thank you very much for that, and we'll advance it. We don't have a quorum, but we'll advance that on Chair's recommendation and Mr. Rosendahl's recommendation.
I'll check.
How soon can we get to council? Because then we can get the place open.
Oh,
After recess? No way you can squeeze it in?
we'll work on it. We'll work on it, Tom.
That'd be good.
We'll work on it, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, because it's,
That's a thing.
that's fine.
I haven't seen that.
All right.
Just going to cross this.
That brings us then to item number 6.
6, yes, last item, which is a CEO report relative to the impact of federal sequestration and capping tax exemptions on the city's municipal debt program. Natalie Brill is here from our office to give the report.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Do you have any specific questions, or do you want me to?
Why don't you just
Okay.
start with an overview, please?
As you know, on Friday, the federal sequestration went into effect, and the city has already reported that about $115 million will be forfeited as part of that. One of the ideas to offset this reduction is the limit on federal income tax on municipal bonds, on tax exemptions in general, but it also affects municipal bonds, and it would cap federal exemptions at 28%. This would be retroactive for municipal bonds as well as prospectively. Early estimates.
Let me stop you right there. It'll operate retroactively?
Yes.
How do
so-
the investors in these bonds not have, I guess you can't sue the federal government for securities
You could.
fraud, but it would be, but it sounds to me like it's something pretty darn close to that when you change the terms of the investment in the course of the investment after they've analyzed the risk and committed their funds.
Well, we agree. One of the impacts is it's technically a breach of contract. I mean, you basically have been told that you will not, have federal tax. Now, there is something in every official statement and all the bond documents about federal tax law and, it could possibly change, but, the municipal community is seeing that, well, that's great, but you are retroactively, so our bonds retroactively would be affected by this. The sequestration itself, we had estimated that the impact would be on attachment 1, that the impact would be on the general fund about $113,000 for the end of this fiscal year. We saw another analysis that just came out today that the impact would not be 77.6%, but actually would be 9.1%. And so we would lose about $136,000 in the general fund. Now, it doesn't affect the debt service because we fund all of our debt service at a gross level, and then we put the money that we receive from the federal government as part of the subsidy into our revenues. So revenue would be short by $136,000 in our accounts for capital finance. So sequestration is going to affect the bond program. As for capping tax exemption, there's been a lot of talk on whether or not this is really, affects wealthy individuals. And what our research has found, and also the Government Finance Office Association, which we're working with, has found, is that 58.7% of the municipal bond market is actually owned by individuals over the age of 65. And that 52.5% of individuals with an average gross income below $250,000 own municipal bonds. So, there's a feeling by the administration that this would actually hurt wealthy bond investors, but it's not necessarily true. It actually hurt not only smaller investors and older investors, but then if we were only to issue taxable debt, the taxpayer would be paying more. And we calculated that if we were to have issued the same amount of debt the next 3 years as we did the previous 3 years, it would cost us at 40 basis points, meaning, if our interest rate was 3% and the impact of taxable debt was, 3.4%, it would cost us $17 million extra. If it was 75 basis points, which is about what most in the municipal market think that, the medium, if you went from 3 to 3.75%, it would be a difference of $33.5 million. If the municipal market really is affected greatly and, investors trying to make up for the cap on the interest is 100 basis point, meaning it goes from 3% to 4%, it would possibly cost us $44.7 million extra in interest over the life of the bonds. So, this capping of tax exemptions would really hurt our ability to attract investors and to attract, all individuals who want an exemption in their taxes from municipal bonds. So we know the city's position already is, but, as we got closer, it became evident that there would be a financial impact on the debt side, and we just wanted you to be aware of it.
Yeah. Well, the council has already, indicated its opposition to changes to the tax exempt status of municipal bonds, and I think as we did that, and as your report indicates, it is simply mythical to think, as some in Washington have said, that this is a way to impact wealthy investors to benefit the Treasury. It is, in fact, a transfer of taxpayer funds from local government to the federal government,
Exactly.
and nothing more than that. So are there particular trigger points that will be coming up that we need to be concerned about in the coming weeks or months? I mean, I know no one knows exactly what the course of affairs will be in Washington, but what are the timing issues that we need to be thinking about for each stage in this process, and especially as we're considering the budget for the next fiscal year?
Well, we participated in all these federal programs, and, in the RFAB program, in the Recovery Zone program, in the Energy Conservation program, and all of those had a subsidy. So what you'll see for next year's budget is a reduction of the amount of interest that we're getting back from the federal government. I mean, the deal was, we'll issue, taxable debt, and in return, you'll give us a subsidy on our interest, right? Well, that's a line item in the federal budget. It's an appropriation. So the sequestration affected that. So instead of getting the full $2.8 million in interest subsidy back from the federal government to make up for the higher interest rate in taxable debt, we'll be getting, 90% of that back versus 100% of the interest back. And one of the things that we always talked about in the Government Finance Office Association Debt Committee that the city participates in is that was the issue, that what happens when the budget gets tight. All of us participated in this program thinking, we'd be reimbursed for our interest because we participated in the federal program as part of the stimulus, and now the federal government is backing away from their promise to us because it is an appropriation line. And sequestration, as you know, was a blunt instrument. It cut everybody across the board, and we were part of that. At the time it made sense because it lowered our interest rate and we got a subsidy. But, does it really, in the long run, does it really behoove us to participate in these programs if the feds are going to go back on their promise to reimburse us? One more comment I have is that Moody's Investor Service today came out with a special comment on United States sequestration. I mean, it came out like half an hour before this committee. And they go through, and there's 4 areas that they say that really will be affected. One of them is defense companies. And there's a broad base of them here in Southern California. For-profit hospitals will be affected because they also issue debt. Banks will be affected because, the Treasury will reduce their hours and all the operation of the Treasury. And then U.S. public finance is the other big area that'll be affected, which is what I just talked about. So Moody's themselves has commented on that. And it just literally came out half an hour ago, so.
I guess related to that, in any of our recent analyses that any of the credit rating agencies have done of the city, have they noted any disproportionate risk that this city compared to other cities around the country face because of this?
It's all the same.
Okay.
It's equal. It's across the board. Everybody is being, the more you issued in these special programs, the more sequestration hurt you, right? Some of the bigger states are affected, Florida, New York. I don't know how much California has outstanding. We participated some, not as much as other states, so.
Okay, Mr. Rosendahl, any questions on this?
Well, just curious. I mean, obviously, we're all living in a sort of a strange spot right now that is unclear. Will it impact future MICLA issuances? Will we have to reduce or eliminate certain purchases due to increased debt service? I mean, where do you think this takes us at this point?
Well, we'll have increased debt service in the sense that on past issuances on the sequestration part, because we won't be getting the subsidy, right? If they do away with if they limit us to 28%,
Yeah.
our costs will grow up.
Right.
You know, and we said, depends on what the market says to us, you know, that will go up because every investor will say, well, to make up for the difference between 35% and the 28%, I want to be compensated for that, right? Because if I have to pay taxes on that, I want a higher interest rate.
Yeah.
So,
Will the
yeah, we will
state's
pay
debt
higher in
program-
Mikola,
Okay, I get
absolutely.
that. Will the state's debt programs be equally impacted?
Everybody.
And if so, could the city feel pain in that, an additional pain because of the state's action? And do we
No,
have
I
a
mean-
sense what that might mean?
The state actually is in better shape today than it was 5 or 6 years ago. There's been some of the financial advisors and bond counsels have mentioned to us
Yeah.
that that's only a positive for us.
Right.
It's really everything that's going on at the federal level that will affect us more than what the state's doing.
Gotcha.
Well, on that point, though, I suppose if we have less of ability to offer benefit for a tax-exempt municipal bonding system of finance, presumably that would mean that there would be a reduction in the overall amount of funding available for public infrastructure, including at the state and city level.
Correct.
And if there's less investment in public infrastructure, particularly transportation projects, that's going to have an impact, a negative impact on the city as well, because of the
Yeah.
impact on the state.
Right, and it's going to affect, you know, the airport, who's issuing debt for the new airport facilities, the harbor, as they continue to update their facilities as part of the Panama Canal, DWP, who has a lot of infrastructure, transportation has infrastructure. I mean, all of us have infrastructure needs, you know, wastewater. You know, we're under an agreement, you know, a court-mandated settlement to do a certain amount of infrastructure work every year. That will, you know, the cost of doing that will go up if we issue debt for it. So, you know, the analysis will have to come down to, is it better to do pay-go or is it better to do, you know, debt? I mean, we do that with every single one, but obviously the cost-benefit analysis will have to be done on each project, as it always is. And it may be better for us to do the pay-go than it is to issue the debt. That's always the question, right? The more expensive the debt gets, the better it is to do pay-go.
Right.
So,
All right. Anything else, Mr.
No,
Ismail?
that's-
All right. Thank you very much.
sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
Well, thank you for being you, by the way. You're great.
Well, I think the only thing is this, you know, we're going to continue monitoring the situation. I mean, the cuts have gone into effect. OMB released a report, I think, on Friday, talking about all the reductions. This was a proposal to offset some of those cuts. We hope this sort of proposal is taken off the table, but unfortunately, I think it's still there. In fact, we read something on Bloomberg where someone suggested actually doing away with tax exempt for all big issuers. So there's a lot of proposals that are being floated around, and hopefully we will come out unscathed.
Yeah, the National League of Cities just is preparing a presentation to take to the federal government, to the administration, and say, look, this is the effect. You know, us, the underwriters, everybody says this is a really bad idea. You know, this tax exemption's been around since 1913. It's worked. You know, you don't provide funding for cities and states to do infrastructure, so.
Just curious, has the LA County Congressional Delegation been actively involved in advocating for the local cities as it relates to this? I know our people have been fighting, but
Yeah, I know that they have been contacted, and I know that the lobbyists in Washington have been working with the California delegation. That's what my intel tells me. So, yes, I mean, they have been, but, you know, it takes X amount of votes to get this through the Senate or through the House. So,
And-
right now, everything's on the table in the federal government, so we hear.
I actually wrote to every member of the California delegation about a month or so ago and sent them a copy of the council's resolution on this point and made the arguments that we've talked about here. So they've all been asked to act on our behalf. Whether or not that's happening is hard to say. I don't know.
that's good. Appreciate everything.
All right. Thank you very much. So we'll note and file the report. Thank you for that. And we called public comment earlier, but I'm happy to call it again. We have Dr. Weissman here, who's filled out a card. If anybody else would like to offer public comment,
Come on up.
fill out a card, but come right on up, Dr. Weissman. Welcome.
Last week, I gave you some documents on the ambulance issue. The ambulance issue that I gave you is something more than just the fact that we do not collect very well for our ambulance transport charges, but we do not even bill for the medical services that those paramedics and EMTs give, and that may be something between 50 and 150 brand-new money. That would cover the sequestration right there. Now, we're going to come forth, I'm going to start this one, Jay, with maybe a little bit of your permission with the word "what if." Can I do that? Thank you. What if we could save you some money? What if we neighborhood council budget advocates could give you information that would save money, that would get new money, that would be helpful? We've been looking hard, and I know you have too. Maybe we found something you didn't have, maybe we only found something you have found. But we know of approximately 10 issues, like the ambulance issue that we put before you last week, that we think is real money, and it's really large amounts of money. What if we could help you with that? What if we could show that to you? Would you restore our allocation to $50,000 for each of our 95 councils? We've been cut down to one-third. We've been cut by one-third, as large a cut as any government agency has been experiencing. And to restore us is 1 or 2 million at most. Well, we'll say the tip when it was right, $1 million here, $1 million there, cut down to our size, is appropriate. It adds up to some money, sure. But let's invest in our neighborhood councils. We'd love to make 8, 9, 10 formal presentations to you here in this committee, as well as our presentations to the mayor and the city council. Thank you very much for hearing me.
All right. Thank you very much. And Mr. Handel?
I'll fill it in.
Go right on it.
Hi, thank you very much. First of all, I just want to say thank you to all of the council members who sit on budget and finance. You have a undaunting job, especially when, it's coming out of left field in the bottom of the ninth with 2 outs, and all of a sudden, give me another 70 million. So I trust me, I like my seat a whole lot better than yours. Thank you very much. For the record, and it's always easy to throw darts and catch them.
Good man.
For the record, as the budget chair for the neighborhood councils, I want to thank the CAO publicly and the CLA's office for all the work and all the participation that they've opened up to us, because we've gotten a lot of good information that we'll be able to come back and hopefully shine some light on some areas that you can take some pretty quick action on, and as a council, and maybe start to fill some of the holes that we have, things where we're thinking outside the box and we're looking at other big cities' best practices that we could implement pretty quickly with, an ordinance change or a directive. Having said that, what I'd like to ask is that as we go into the budget process, our paper will come out in the next couple of weeks. We'll be meeting with the mayor at the end of March.
Great.
What I would like to do, and our points will probably be 12 or 13 points this year on the white paper, somewhere in that area. And I would ask that budget and finance think about allowing us, when you meet with your departments one by one, as we have issues to deal with those departments, that you allow us to maybe accumulate, 5 minutes, as opposed to everyone trying to get up and rush and look at the clock and get the last 3-pointer out before the game's over. Maybe we can figure a way that we can make a presentation within that department so that we can make a comprehensive one-person presentation as opposed to 12 people trying to come up here and jam 2 minutes at a time and not give you the real overview of the work we've done. So it's for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, look forward to talking to you both about that, and thank you both for your service as budget advocates. None of our budget work, Mr. Handel, is anything other than a thankless job, and it is likewise for the work that you're doing, so thank you very much.
It's a thanking game.
All right, so with that, we are at the conclusion of our business, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Amen.